All right. As usual, give people a few minutes to join up, and then we have one agenda item today, which is to talk about all things GitHub for OPI. So Mark Sanders is going to lead that conversation, and we'll have some requests for you. Are there any other agenda items? All right, so we'll wait till about 5 after to get started. Does anyone have any topics for future agenda items? All right, Mark, why don't we go ahead and get started? Do you want to share?
Let me get off mute. Yes, I will share. Just give me a second here.
Okay. And again, if you have any agenda items for future meetings, will let me know either through the TSC chat, the mailing list, or direct chat or direct email. And
Okay.
remember, something very important here. Our Slack is not being archived, or rather, it is being archived, but we can't access it past a certain history. And I don't know how long they keep it in case we change our minds and pay the Slack fee, but information on Slack is not permanent. The mailing list is archived, Slack is not. So just keep that in mind and tell all the other people from your companies and remind them of that when they're doing work for OPI. All right, Mark, go ahead and share and kick off this topic.
As soon as you stop sharing, I will. All right, Joe. I couldn't share.
No,
All right.
that was perfectly appropriate. Yeah, because I was in the process of moving my mouse to click while I was talking. I was just slow. All right.
It's all right. Okay. So first thing we'll talk about is the GitHub repository structure. Right now we've got 29 GitHub repositories. Some of these are for the generic OPI main site, etc. So some of them are the things that we need to keep and are generic. We have a lot of things that are around some of the prototyping work. So for example, where you've got an Excite bridge, a Marvell bridge, an NVIDIA bridge, et cetera, et cetera. Most of these handle portions of what we've defined so far in the APIs. And when I say that, It's really, they're primarily storage focused, inventory focused, and in some cases they'll pull in IPsec. So some of the things we could do to change the repositories or to reduce them down, we could do some combinations and create, you know, a vendor repo and then put the different vendor things in there, et cetera. So we've got a lot of different repos that are out here. We have a couple of repos that are around CLIs. So we have a Go-based CLI communications repo as well as a Python-based. In addition to that, we've got a couple of CNI repos that we've set up. One of them is the new one that's here for EVPN Gateway. This is very specific to the work that Intel and Ericsson are doing currently, and then this will hopefully expand out and will allow other gateway solutions or other CNI type solutions to be incorporated, and then we can merge and combine that into what we call our generic OPI CNI repo. So we have both of those set up for work streams to work on. We have for IPsec, we've got a strong SWAN bridge. We should also take a look at other IPsec type solutions, as well as trying to make this a little more generic. Right now, it's very specific to strong SWAN and VG, and we probably need to make considerations around other IPsec solutions that need to be put out there. So in general, this is our overall GitHub repo. We've got one repo that's out here, if I can find it. Session offload. We actually forked this from the AT&T session offload, and Kyle, when he was still involved in the project, did quite a bit of work on some of the functionality in the session offload. This has been attempted to be contributed back to the AT&T session offload project. However, that project seems to be dormant. It's something we'll be discussing in the API meeting today. Since we have it out there, we've done some work around the API for that, but we have an open issue about contributing back. Since it seems to be dormant, we may just close the issue, and then we'll just do the going forward support around session offload as part of OPI. So any questions or thoughts around the overall repository structure and concerns, et cetera, things that we can think about addressing there? Okay, so we may put together.
Are you
Sorry,
concerned, Mark, that we have too many repos, or you're concerned with how they're organized?
So this will probably come up as we go forward. So one of the things that we've run into being maintainers is we've apparently got some circular dependencies now created because of the number of repos. So as an example, there's a circular dependency that exists between the SPDK bridge, the Go DPU, and some of the other repos. So if you make a change to the API and it affects something to do with storage and SPDK, you now have to update the SPDK bridge. You can't update the SPDK bridge and have it pass the CI tests until Go DPU is updated, but Go DPU won't pass the tests until SPDK is updated. So we've got issues like this that have occurred due to the way that the repo has kind of been flushed out. So some of the things that we're looking at is to potentially stub out some of these dependencies and then have one function that would do that type of testing once everything gets up to date.
Yeah, and Tim, the other question we're really asking is, do people who use these repos and look at them and try to understand them, like the structure of essentially every folder is its own repo, because that's the structure we have now. Every sort of top level folder is its own repo, independent of the structure of the code. So if you have a whole bunch of code that really kind of goes together, do you put it in 5 repos, or do you put it in one repo with 5 top level folders, each of which builds an independent component? And there are arguments each way, and projects have been done each way. The question about doing it this way is, if we do another round of expansion for DPUs, are we going to suddenly end up with 40 repos or maybe 60 repos? And then where does that end? We had a project at Dell where we had 100, 120 repos, and it was unwieldy to work in it. And it was to build one software product, and it was unwieldy to work in it. That was too many. If I have 6 or 8 repos, is it so bad? Nah, not usually. Again, as long as the layering is correct and you don't end up with circular dependencies, which make it really a nightmare to make any kind of update or modification. And so what we're asking for is, look, you guys all have experience doing a lot of projects, a lot of coding, and some people even have fairly extensive open source experience. We ended up where we are now kind of by default, without putting, there wasn't a lot of upfront thought in it. And this approach was picked because in principle it allows PR and vendor and implementer semi-independence locked into their own repo. It also allows you to pull only the pieces that you actually need, as opposed to pulling things you don't need and only building what you need.
And it also allows for the ability that if you just need to say, I want to use NVIDIA Bridge and I want to pull in Strong Swan and I want to pull in, say, some networking functionality, you can pull them in and then have this distributed bridge solution that sits out there in the DPU.
Right. But again, it comes with trade-offs because it gets unwieldy pretty quickly once you get enough repos. And the structure of the repos is not apparent because the structure of the repos is partially encoded in the name and partially simply knowledge. And again, once it gets big enough, it can be hard to navigate. So we're really asking is, do we need to make a change for what we have? And going forward, should we do new things differently? And this sort of goes into the quick start how-to guide as well, right? Because your repo structure matters for how people use your open source projects. Thoughts? We'll take any input and any advice.
So I'm not a TSC member, but I connected in just to kind of listen today. And the thing that comes to mind is there's 2 things. One is the existing CI capabilities, which don't really enable you to address the cross-repo dependency issue. That's one aspect, and that is what it is, I think. But I think there's a kind of a underlying sign that there's there might be some bad articulation or bad contracting between components if one component's breaking another component, or one library or one distinct thing is breaking another with changes. And there are times to be disruptive, and that is kind of where we're at, is where it makes sense to try and be disruptive and move fast, but at some point you also hinder your ability to adopt if that's the case. So there's a balance point there that you kind of have to find and leverage. And I guess that's the whole purpose of the discussion. It just seems like there's some other additional underlying problems that might be worthwhile to keep in mind.
No, that's good input, Julia. We appreciate that. Those are some of the issues that we're facing, and some of the other things that we're facing when you deal with the CI/CD is right now we're basically down to about 2 maintainers working on the project. Myself and Artec. We'd like to get more maintainers up to speed. There's some guidelines around moving into the maintainer pool, which really deals with the fact that you need to be doing, at least initially going out into the system, doing code reviews or doing contributions that allow you to move into that maintainer pool. We would like to get somebody who's a maintainer other than folks from Dell and Intel. That's what we have had in the past and what we still have, and it would be great to have maintainers from other organizations become involved in this more, and at least do code reviews, at least do contributions or something to that effect. If you look at the overall view of things, this is what occurs a lot of the time with the CI/CD type operations. Right now, we've got 130 pull requests that are out there. Some of these are generated by just simply dependency updates, but you have to keep in mind when a dependency updates, sometimes it can also cause issues in the build of the system. So for example, if you look at this one that I have, put the mouse cursor on about the Intel bridge, and this is a common one that's across many of the repos. It wants us to update the Mockery, which is used around Go, to version 240.1, but to do that, it requires you to also move to Go 121, which then adds some additional requirements into your mod files. The problem with that is we try to build for 3 different versions of Go today. We build for 19, 20, and 21. If we move to 21 right now, we will not be able to build for Go 19 and 20. And maybe that's the right move. That's something we're discussing, myself and the other maintainer. We're discussing, do we just go ahead and make the move to 20 to 21, and then we'll move forward from there. But again, these are the types of things that we have to go out and triage and go figure out what's going on. And this is due to, our CI/CD process and our weekly checks for updates to the different software packages that are used among the different repos.
So it's good to kind of hear the background driver. Being a maintainer is often thankless as well. So
yep,
the key is onboarding more people and somehow spreading that trust around, and that is always a challenge in open source projects. So I definite challenges. Just the root problem and simplification is probably the 2 areas to focus, at least from my experience.
Yeah, and can we get some help from, basically we have Dell and Intel as maintainers now. It would be nice to have a wider variety of member companies each have a maintainer, and then the load on the each maintainer goes down, and again, people and companies feel more invested all, there's a number of sort of virtuous cycle things. Oren, I think you came off mute. Go ahead. Or Satananda?
So one option I was thinking is that whatever the vendor bridges are, I think vendors should maintain, right?
That'd be great.
Isn't it like a clear-cut thing that if a vendor bridge is not being maintained by the vendor, we mark it as unmaintained or something?
No, that would be great. I mean, I'm showing this is, this is today's statistics on the filter, right? And you see 130. As Joe can tell you, probably a week and a half ago, we had probably around 160 some odd PRs. So we've been working hard to knock them down, but we still have several to go. And of course, there's several in here that are just old PRs that we're going to start triaging out of the system. I have that scheduled in the API meeting today to triage out several, with reviews with the group. Okay.
Regarding maintainership of vendor components, I think that's kind of what was just suggested is an obvious path forward. The problem is that you end up with, is it part of the project or is it an ancillary thing or not? And really, at some point, you have to either trust them to do the needful or not, and clearly delineate. And these are all problems other open source projects have had over the years. So as long as there is a stance and a approach that is documented and a path for the vendor to do the needful for their thing, usually that provides enough runway to enable them as long as they're willing to maintain. That's the other problem, is vendors often aren't necessarily willing to maintain the same timeline or schedule or life cycle that a community is wanting things to be maintained on. So that's a whole other challenge, but it's related.
Yeah, well, and so that segues into another good point. So for this to be successful, we need at least a minimal DPU vendor engagement for putting the right code in place to integrate with OPI, even if that, a vendor's not doing big feature development, right? We don't have requirements that, you have to submit some number of lines of code or anything, but we really do need a commitment if we want to continue OPI forward to maintaining at least any bridges or interfaces to the DPUs themselves, DPU IPUs. So when I say DPU, I always mean DPU IPU. It's kind of awkward phrasing. And maybe we need to drive that at the board level, that commitment at the board level, and I'll certainly bring that up as an adjunct to this at the next board meeting in February. But that would go a long way towards organizing this properly. I mean, the other way to organize all this stuff is put another level of project in and basically have sub-projects that have repos under the OPI project. And that has a different level of sort of structural complexity, but it is a way. So you treat the projects like they were folders, and you do the traditional folder-based hierarchy, and then things are grouped in reasonable ways, but you still keep the separate repo identity so that we can assign, specific maintainers just to those repos, and they can all be updated completely independently. Now, I personally don't have a problem with using folders inside of a repo for that, because maybe that's because that's the way I worked for years and years and years when I was coding, and got used to that approach. And then you just build what you want, right? You can build stuff from a directory structure or folder structure, 18 different ways or however many ways you want. So what do you guys think about
Yeah, if we could layer that
So-
way, then you could do JIT submodules, right? Like if you need a vendor's some plugin, you could do a submodule pull. It could still be a different repo, but it lies under a big a upper directory, and you only pull it if you are building for that vendor's IPU, DPU. I think that I would like that. That approach is something I can vote for.
I mean, submodules don't fix the review problem that exists with the maintainers are expressing.
Yeah, they don't completely fix that problem. I mean, we also have to break circular dependencies, and there's still a number of different repos, and it doesn't fix. I'm jumping around a little bit. I apologize. It doesn't fix the number of reviewers.
Right.
So I was going back to the sort of the repo and code structure discussion a little bit, because we were talking about the vendor bridges and the vendor code to allow someone to put OPI on a particular DPU. The maintainer reviewer one, we need people to sign up, and I know no one's likely to volunteer or sign someone up on this call today. We've made this soft ask before. This has to be a harder ask, or we likely can't maintain OPI in the way we're doing it, right? We need more maintainers. Vendor maintainers for the vendor bridges and any vendor libraries that are needed to allow OPI to run on the DPUs and IPUs would be good, that are separate from our primary maintainers. And we need a bit more company diversity. So take that feedback back. If you're a TSC member, talk to your board members. If you're not a TSC member, talk to your TSC chair for your company, and get your board member involved and see what kind of commitment. It's not a lot of time. If we get a good enough pool, it's not actually a huge amount of time. I don't know, Mark, maybe you can comment on that.
If the pool's big enough, it won't be a huge amount of time. It's just right now, it takes a bit of time between myself and our tech to wade through these things. And of course, we also have our day job to do. So I think, Julie, I think you have your hand raised. I see it on.
I do. So going to the topic of repo structure, one thing to kind of point out is packagers in terms of distributions tend to think of a repo per thing, and to put many things in a single repo also then creates challenges, I guess is the way to put it, with packaging pipelines and processes. And what if they have to pull a patch to ship that? Because that's kind of an ultimate goal for any project is I have distribution packaging. I'm in a distribution where it can be pulled into a distribution very easily. And I just would encourage that kind of thought process kept in mind, and also in the entire process, what is this thing? What is the thing that is being consumed? And maybe also consider breaking along those lines, or keep that in mind when considering decoupling or merging things together, because that can create a world of pain, and it can also make things very simple.
No, excellent point. Excellent point. Because we want to be very careful how we combine things or pull things together if we do that. But I think in terms of putting that together, we should put together proposals about, these are some of the considerations that need to be taken into account if we want to combine things or make them into package sets or whatever, and then put it forward to get feedback from the group. Not just this group, but also the different work stream groups. Okay. Joe, what was the other topic that we had to cover around the Git? We covered maintainers, we've covered the repo. We talked about the CI/CD and some of the issues there.
Right. Yeah, circular dependency.
Mhm.
The whole automation structure. Maybe you should describe what's been put in place, what it's doing, why it's doing it.
Yep.
And so go through the whole automation piece that's generating the large number of PRs.
So what we've created, there's an actions area, which basically we have a repo that's pointed to by the different projects that they can utilize to do the various CI/CD operations. So one of the operations that occurs on a weekly basis is called Renovate. What Renovate does is it goes through essentially your code, and it looks at the Renovate schema, and it uses that to determine what package files that are being used may be updated. This includes, for example, it would include like SPDK new version. It would include the SPDK bridge new version, potentially SPDK new version, any version changes within the code or in the referenced modules that have to be updated. So when the APIs change, which we are in the case of, we're defining new APIs, we're trying to refactor some of the APIs. We're working on doing API automation where the API and the proto files will be in the API repository, but the generated files that you get from building out those protobufs into your files that you're going to use in the operation, those we're going to move to a separate repo where we can version it correctly, etc. So both cases we want to version it properly and get all that set up. So we're still in the process of doing that, which means the API repo does go through some changes on the existing system stuff that we've defined, and we'll go through continued changes as we define new API definitions. So again, that causes updates across multiple repos within the system. But basically what goes on with the automation is, number one, it does a check of these types of things on a weekly basis. And then of course it generates these new pull requests that you'll see around, for example, updating the mockery to version 240.1, et cetera. It does things like that. The other thing that occurs if we look at a different repo, let's pull up, that's a good one. So another thing that occurs if you look at the different pull requests is for each, so for each check-in, we can just look at the one that was done for mockery. It goes through a series of tests. These tests actually do like a build. And again, this is where I was talking about the fact that our Go build will not work because mockery update here to the mod file wants you to put in Go version 121, and it causes a cascading set of errors that occurs within the code QL, within the Go calls, etc. All the commit stuff works, the linters work, things like that. But these are the things that we run automatically when you check something in to make sure that the code quality is there. It does some security checks, things like that. So those are the things that run with each check-in. And then of course you have these weekly things that run to make sure that everything is up to date. So that's how all the automation and things work. The last piece of the automation is we also want to have an automatic versioning going on. So you will see in certain cases for the different pull requests, there'll be a chore for doing a release. So for example, here it's already saying, hey, we're to the point where we may want to do a release 0.2 of our EVPN bridge. So in doing that, we just have to approve it and it'll do an auto release. But those are the types of things that are occurring with the automation and with our code check-in process. So any questions on that?
Any questions about the automation system?
Just seems to me that if you've got circular dependencies, can you turn off one of the dependencies so you can build something, and then come back and build the other, and then check that they're working together?
Yeah, we've managed to work around it just recently because we were battling with it for quite a while.
Okay.
But we did work around it. We were able to get through a current circular dependency. Now we're trying to figure out how we can basically do a stub type operation to eliminate the circular dependencies that exist and then allow us to get through the testing stages for changes to the API or changes to something else, and then you have a higher level function that once everything is in place, you can then run a separate test cycle to make sure everything's working. But we're busy working on figuring out how to put that together.
Okay.
Okay. That's all I had, Joe, unless there's something else that we need to cover around this.
Let's see. Murchie is volunteering to be a reviewer for PyDPU and OPI POC
Okay.
in text chat. Yeah, just reach out to Mark and he'll set you up with whatever, answer any questions, and that would be great, Murchie. That's fantastic. All right. Anybody have any other thoughts or questions on this topic? We wanted to put it in front of everyone and get feedback. And again, you can give your feedback outside of this meeting if you prefer, or add your thoughts outside of this meeting. We didn't have a, okay, here's what we're going to do, let's vote on it decision yet. So Mark and I are going to talk early next week and see which proposal we want to make. And then we'll bring it back to, our group here and vote on it. But that, again, if you have ideas about what we should actually do, just let us know. You can whisper Mark directly in Slack and it'll be fine. I'm using old school terminology of whisper. You can direct message Mark on Slack. And
yeah, and if you want to get, if anybody wants to get involved, I can send them this search pattern that we typically use for pull requests so that they can just, jump in and dig into anything.
All right. Any questions or any thoughts at all from anyone?
I guess, Mark, is there a way to search for and find PRs that are non-code, that are, a README text file that's been updated or something like that? Those are things that, sure, I can review.
There's not an easy way to do that, because I've even looked for some of the ones where I was trying to find out, okay, what is this one code? Is this one just an update? So for example, at this top level, this is one right here that is strictly text,
Okay.
right? But the problem with this one, we've reached back out to Dan and all, or Dan's on the call. Oh, good. We've got to fix the commit message. That's all that has to happen, and this will
Okay.
go in. So those are some of the things that, you know, we stumble onto, and we can assist in getting the commit message fixed, give the guidance on that. But those are the types of things now that there's commit message checking to make it align with the standard Git commit messages.
Yeah.
And trust me, once they turned that on, I think even some of us as maintainers fell into that trap. So it's,
Yeah, and you know, there are a large number of global search and filter tools, but you know, so you can go on the URL line and construct a URL, for example, at the OpenAI project that gives you all open PRs with certain properties or flags set. And that language, you know, that language isn't too hard to use, but I've never seen anything that distinguishes one kind of file from another.
Okay.
All files are kind of equal in the eyes of the Git universe.
right. These are the advanced things that you can actually put in. So, and there may be others. It's just a matter of working through a lot of the different syntax that's out there.
That's right. Yeah, so capture that one, right? OPI project is PR is open. That'll do all the ones across all the repos. So again, Git has some tools for working across all these repos. And you know, maybe we could draw maybe one way out of this without changing the repo structure itself is to draw a picture and make that very easy to find, that has the structure. And basically it puts in the layers that aren't encoded directly in the structure itself. It puts the structure in saying what goes with what and why they're grouped that way. And we probably need a dependency diagram, and we have to fix this Go unit test library thing. We have to fix it somehow. I mean, that one's just unpleasant to work with.
Yeah, the circular dependency is a pain.
Any other actions we should take from this from anyone, or any other input, or again, if you want to volunteer, you don't have to do it here and record it. You can do it. You can do it through one of our other communication mediums.
What about relaxing the rules? Like, for example, that one with fixing the commit message. I mean, maybe I would just merge it in and accept it if it's not a big deal and it's just, I don't know, the system being too strict.
Well, Mark, can you pull that one up and let's see what it flagged?
Sure. So
I mean, like a general note, not nitpicking on a
I know,
specific
but
topic.
let's see. Let's, you know, I think it's instructive to look at one on and see what it flagged.
right. So what
Yeah,
it
it flagged one of mine earlier too. So
yeah. So what it flags is the actual commit message. Okay. So if your commit message is formatted more like, let's flip back to like this, right? If you put whatever it is you're changing, so in that case of that one, it would be docs, right? And then you could either put the parentheses or not. You could put a colon and then put your message in, but do not put a capital here, because if you put a capital where update is, it'll flag that. And if you put a period at the end, it'll flag that. It's got very specific rules that gets put in place
All right. So
for commit messages.
Where do those rules come from, and why is it done that way? Is there some, you know, 10-year on future state to make it better, more searchable? Is it I mean, why is it done that way? Because as Murchie was just pointing out, maybe that's too much structure and no one will ever actually benefit from that structure.
Or better yet, does it spit out what needs to change?
No, it just tells you that well, for example, here, subject may not be empty, subject may not end with a full stop, type may not be empty, etc. So what it's really looking for, and you can do a real quick search. I have to go find it again. I think it's this.
But do you know, is it, okay, what's the reasoning for why the rules are what they are?
Git put in this set of rules because they wanted to standardize the way that commit messages were being done, because they were relatively random all the time. And so they use this Angular convention set. So you can use build, shore, CI, doc, style, refactor, perf, test, etc. And this is the entire guidance, which is right here.
And I would guess, well, and so to what end?
Their goal was just to make it more conventional and more easy for humans and machines to be able to look at the messaging. Probably has something to do with the way that they want to do automation around their searching, etc. But it's not clear as to why this was ever put in place. It's just something that occurred.
In history parsing, right? If you want if you want to only look at certain types of messages, commits.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So,
but wait, no, my question was not to nitpick on a specific stuff, was to get an agreement on this community to relax a bit the rules, or maybe empower more the maintainers to just say, yeah, okay, merge it, whatever, it's a capital letter, or to make the decision that to override some of these rules case by case, just so we can get merged in few things without now waiting for XYZ person to change a letter or something, where it's a small thing, just merge it.
Yeah, I think the key to this conventional commit is in the subtitle. I think machine readable is now the key, because just like log messages, right? So structured log messages were put in place so that machines could parse them more easily and catalog them more easily, categorize and sort them and organize them more easily. And okay.
No, I mean, I understand the purpose, but it's like the line length of the code should be 80 characters or whatever, and somebody has a commit of 100 lines and one line it's 81, and now we hold the commit because you don't have 80 characters per line, now you exceeded by one, go refactor. I mean, I don't know, I feel like if we are nitpicking too much, if we do some exceptions, just to merge some code, I think we'll make some progress.
Yeah.
Is this a check that can be turned off, or is this Git wide?
I'm not asking to turn it off, just the maintainer to have some discretion to say, yeah, okay, fine. It's just
So to answer Paul's question, we can make this a non-required.
Yeah, and so my opinion is that we should either do this format or not do this format. So we either follow this format, which isn't too horrible, you just have to know what it is, or we just disable it and we don't follow this format and don't worry about it. I don't like the hybrid Merchio for the following reason. If we, partial compliance to specifications or standards is the worst thing ever for projects. So if we want it free form, fine, it's free form, and we deal with those consequences. If we want to follow this consistent, or whatever they called it, commit approach, then we just learn how to do that. It didn't look too terrible. I mean, the rules aren't too baroque and obscure, and the thing, just like a compiler, the thing flags it when you're wrong, and you just have to go look at the standard. So, and again, we can help people the first couple of times, and you just have to you have to know what to put in. I don't like the idea of sometimes you allow the PR with the rules and sometimes you don't. In other words, because I think that I don't like that inconsistency. Although I don't mind us voting to just turn those off, because I don't know that they're ever going to matter for us in the way that Git itself has imposed them, especially for enormous projects. I mean, even if we're wildly successful, we'll have at most a few hundred developers. I don't see us ever getting into the thousands or tens of thousands of developers class of project. It's just DPUs are not general purpose enough for that. But if we're wildly successful, we could have hundreds. Would we need that formalism in place to deal with that scale? I don't know. I haven't thought about it enough. All right, we'll think about it and we'll make a proposal for which way to go. If you have one that's only failing because of the commit message right now, just go fix the commit message for now. It's not that hard. It doesn't look to be that hard.
Well, I just did fix the commit message, but it's upset with my older commit messages. So I have to go back and change my commit messages to, because I can't, my recommit is not sufficient. So
Really?
It's
you can't just recommit. You have to either change the old messages or you can do a git rebase interactive, and then you can squash them.
Oh, shit.
Yeah,
Which you
it's
can't
a
do
pain.
with
When
the,
you fall
UI.
into the trap, it's a pain.
Yeah.
All right. So in that case, do we let them through? If we have this situation, do we let them through? Because I'm willing to be flexible on.
Yeah, I say yes, but that's me.
To
Mark,
be
what do you
honest, this is basic, Git functionality. This is something that, if you're going to be a contributor to an open source project that uses Git, which is the majority of them, learning how to go back and amend commits is a good skill to have.
How many are we talking about, Dan? Like 4?
no, it's not a big deal. Yeah, but like you're saying,
All right,
but
just wait.
but
All right.
I also think it's not a big deal to just let it through. But this particular one shouldn't be. It still needs to be reviewed. Like we met on Tuesday and still need to discuss. So so the commit message is not a big deal.
right.
I just thought I'd try to fix it live here while we were looking at it.
Yeah,
Right.
you have to do the wonderful rebase, Dan. That's the easiest way I can tell you to do it.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Just fix them then. The answer is just fix them then. If it's not very many, just fix them, and let's keep this in place going forward. Because I don't think it's that onerous. This one's not that onerous, and who knows, long-term value, maybe there's some, because if you have a machine parsable format, maybe Git will produce some tool that goes and does this lovely job of a Git narrative. They'll have some AI tool that does a Git narrative on your project, and who knows what they're going to produce. So let's follow this one. Okay. Anything else? We're at time. All right, got 4 minutes to get to your next call. Thank you very much for the comments and participation. Mark and I will make a proposal for what we're going to do and put it in front of everyone, and we'll vote on it. Thank you. If you want to contribute to that, just let Mark know. Thank you.